Okay, so good morning, everyone. Thanks for taking the time to come in this morning. So this is the professional exam CAPFT mandatory questions information session. So similar to what Farah was putting on for information sessions, this one will focus specifically on CAPFT. So there will be the 2 mandatory questions and 1 optional question that you'll find on your exam, and that's what this one's purpose is going to be today. So just to reiterate what Farah has told you guys in the last few, the March exam will be Saturday of the 23rd, starting at 9 o'clock at all locations. The main writing location will be here in Edmonton at the NAIT campus, room B322, and it will be open a little bit beforehand, so you'll be able to come in and get settled. There is a map available. It isn't actually attached to this presentation, but if anybody does need it, just feel free to send me an email or give me a phone call after this presentation and I can provide it to you. There will be other locations available on demand, and we are looking to.
Has joined the conference.
Sorry about that, guys.
Participant has left the conference.
Sorry, I'm not able to mute the conference line at all without them losing me, so sorry about that. Just one moment. If anybody on the phone line, if you can mute yourself on your end, just to reduce feedback and for the purposes of recording, that would be great. Thank you. Okay, so yeah, the secondary locations, we do have a few that we will be organizing. If you don't have one, just feel free to give us a shout if you're unable to make it to one of the currently organized ones, and we can see what we can do to organize an additional one here for you. So the purpose of this session is just to give you all the information on CAPFT, so the regulation, the act, bylaws, complaint process, general business and structure of the college and of the membership. So on your exam, you will find the 2 mandatory questions regarding CAPFT and 1 optional question. That optional one, I believe, being the complaints process. So you'll find the same format as the rest of the questions, and again, they'll be worth 10 marks. And the mandatory questions are going to cover specifically CAPFT bylaws, your code of ethics and code of conduct, your duties and membership requirements as a regulated member, and the continuing competency program. With the optional will be the complaints process extending to the alternative complaints resolution process, and we will go through that later on in this session. So similar to all of the other topics on the exam, there is a reading list available on the CAPFT professional exam page through the CAPFT website. There's a link right here that'll take you there. You can also use this resources page also on the CAPFT website, and that will give you a list of all of the other websites that you'll find the additional information on. So while we're going through this, and as Farah has said before, there is some information that you'll find on the website and just in the day-to-day business through the college that I'm sure you're familiar with through your membership, but isn't exactly how it's written in our current legislation. So our legislation is currently undergoing a review and revision. It is in with enterprise and advanced education at the moment, but the approval is still pending, just given that it still needs to go for conference. So if you're not sure or if you're finding any conflicting information, when in doubt, go with the original. And if there is conflicting information, the exam isn't going to reflect that. So that'll be updated in the exam. So we're not testing you on any questions where there might be alternate responses. If you do have any questions, feel free to contact Myra or myself at the office, or you could also send Farah a quick email. The office is a really good resource for all of the newest information that's going on here, especially with the regulations. But Farah will be also a very good resource to let you know what to focus on in regards to the exam. So again, you'll find this from one of the other slides. What is a professional? So someone in advanced learning or science who has met the criteria to be a regulated professional with a profession. So how do you know if you are practicing forestry or if you fall under the Act? So the practice of forestry is defined by the Act as the following here. So the inventory, classification, and evaluation of forests and forested land, development and implementation of harvesting and renewal programs, any conservation, reclamation, improvement or protection of the resource, and protection that extends to and includes any kind of fire programs. Preparation of FMPs, development of integrated resource plans, and also teaching the practice of forestry at any institute, college or university. So institutes, that would be something extending to the Hinton Training Center. And of course, sorry about that, any research, any forestry research conducted. So Annex 2 is something that you're going to want to make sure that you take a look at. I think I might have skipped something on you here, sorry. Let me go back. So this is out of the Alberta Forest Management Planning Standards, and basically what it does is specify an RFP's role in forest management, and lays out the significance of validation by a forest professional, and that validation being your signature or stamp. So it outlines the different roles in which that validation might be needed, such as FMPs or AOPs. So this will be a piece that you'll want to make sure that you know. It's kind of going outside the realm of CAPFT stuff today. So what's professional legislation? Under the province, we do follow legislation that was passed by our provincial legislation to issue the governance of the profession. So it is a privilege granted by government that allows us to perform self-governance of our profession. So under that Act, we, CAPFT, do have responsibilities to the profession. And this is reflected in the college's objectives and strategic plan, and that is to establish fair and credible eligibility criteria to bring members in and to be able to regulate them. To develop, implement, and maintain a continuing competency program. To define the complaints investigation process as outlined by the Act, and through that to provide a formalized discipline and appeals process that will be delivered by peers. We do establish the standards of practice and any code of ethics and code of conduct, any ethical standards of practice that a member is required to uphold in order to maintain the profession. And again, with complaints, providing an alternative complaints resolution process and disciplinary action process. So the Act itself was proclaimed as an Act on April 25th, 2002, passed by the province. And under that Act, there are 3 separate regulations. The one that you'll be making sure that you're familiar with is the RPFT regulation. We're also under the same Act as the foresters, and so because of that, this Act is able to establish 2 self-governing organizations in the forestry profession, and that is CAPFT and CAPF. So the Act establishes public accountability anywhere where public interest is served, and that is really the primary function. Anywhere where public interest is at hand, the Act will apply for forestry. It provides protected titles for the profession. And I think in the original slideshow, this protected titles also said exclusive scope of practice. That's actually incorrect, but it does provide the protected titles. And also allows us the ability to self-govern the profession. There are a few key principles to the Act. So the right to title, as mentioned, and that extends to the foresters and to us. So foresters, they have FIT and RPF. We have RPFT, RFT, and FTT. So this is one of those areas where you're going to find a difference in the practice versus what's actually in the current regulation. So we actually have an FTT register, similar to the foresters. However, when you take a look at the regulation, you will see it listed as a conditional register. So when in doubt, go to what's actually written. The public accountability, in order to serve the public interest, we do have to be accountable to the public. And we do that by making sure that we are including the public in the governance of the college. So under the Act, excuse me, at a minimum we have to include 25% of our council and any hearings tribunals or review councils to be made up of those public members. Public members are actually appointed through the government. So they are approved through enterprise and advanced education. They would apply for a position on the council through the college, and we forward that on to the government. Also, all hearings are open to the public under general circumstances. There are some exceptions that will apply. We'll actually expand on that later on when we get to the complaints process. Additional key principles through the Act, it allows us to set the benchmark for registration. So there is an emphasis on competence to be able to perform forestry, and what that does is allow us to maintain the profession. And we also do that through the maintenance of the continuing competency program. Mandatory registration extends on who must be registered in the province, and I won't spend too much time on that now because we'll be going through that later as well. It allows us to have a peer-based complaints process. And so the benefit to having a peer review is that you are reviewed by people who are familiar with the profession, not solely public. So you will be, any review will be done by those who are aware of the act and the regulations and any act that you might be held under for your profession. The Act allows us to establish the Code of Ethics and Code of Conduct, which is provides ethical guidance for standards of practice and principles. It allows us to provide licenses to the regulated members of the profession and of the practice through the annual practice permits. So there are a number of conditions that need to be met in order to receive a license, and a number of conditions that need to be met in order to maintain it. And under the Alberta legislation, it's actually very unique in that it allows both the foresters and the technologists in the province equal professional status, which is quite unique to our province. It's a different structure that you'll find in any of the other Western provinces. So here's something important that you will need to know for your exam. Be able to state the CAPFT vision and mission statement. So the vision being forested land management by professionals who care. And the mission statement, the College of Alberta Professional Forest Technologists will promote the professional management of all forested land in the province of Alberta. So two short little blurbs that I would recommend that you hold on to, hint, hint. So we achieve our mission through the following, and you can find this on the CAPFT website. There's a link here for you guys. So through the CC program, through being involved in educational programs, continuing education, providing that continuing education opportunity to the membership, by presenting a strong and unified voice for the profession, developing a public perception that professionals are responsibly managing the forest resources as well. So the college objectives, and these are also available on the website, to promote and encourage education and training to the membership in all matters that might relate to the profession. To secure a strong degree of recognition of the profession, and to cultivate a unified body within the technologists' ranks and all the disciplines relating to forestry in the province. To provide for professional conduct and ethics within the profession, and an opportunity for the gathering of the members. So that'll be through events like the tech session and AGM. Promote and afford the opportunity of interaction and technology transfer activities. So again, the continuing competency, the learning, and the technical sessions. So in order to provide governance of the college, we do have to have some people behind the scenes, and this is how the council is actually structured. So we do have both the executive council and the CAPFT council. So your executive council consists of your president, your vice president, and your past president. So those are all 3-year terms. These are the longest terms, and most, because there are quite busy, important roles on the council. All of them are very important roles, actually. We couldn't do without any of our volunteers. Extending to the council, this is your executive council as well as all of the directors and councillors. Your finance director is also part of your executive committee, and your registrar sits on the executive committee. And your registrar is actually an ex officio member. They're just primarily to facilitate for the volunteers, but it is the council that actually does the voting for the management of the college. So your other directors are your membership, communications, hearing, exam, and CIF. So your CIF is actually not a director but a representative, as well as the NATE representative. These are non-voting appointments, but still very important appointments on the council. We also have a few additional roles: the complaints and the continuing competency director, and the aforementioned NATE representative. And now here's another one of the little changes that will be a little bit different when you find it in writing on the bylaws, is that these 3 roles aren't currently listed in the bylaws, although they are very busy, very active, very important roles on the council, and they have been implemented for a number of years now. And so you actually will see that change formally happen this April at the AGM. So just something to remember for the exam here, that they're not actually listed, but they are roles that are currently in force. And then also your public members, the 25% public members that are appointed through the government. They do sit on the college council as well, and those are voting positions. So extending from your directors, we do have a number of committees. The Continuing Competence Committee, the Membership Committee, and the Complaints Committee, which all help to facilitate all of the work that is organized around each director. And then you have your staff members, who are both involved in all of the meetings that go on with the governance of the board, but are non-voting positions, so we're ex officio. And there's a link at the bottom here if you do want to find where this is in our bylaws. And so who should be registered as a member with CAPFT? So if you've met the requirements, you would be under mandatory registration, and if you are practicing forestry, you would be registered with the college. There are a few exceptions in the province to these rules, and that is if a person is a regulated member of another college. So if you do maybe have both a diploma and a degree, you wouldn't necessarily need to be members of both CAPFT and CAPF. But you would have to be regulated under one of the colleges. If you're a current student in the profession, so for example, if you are still in your NATE program, you wouldn't be required to be regulated. If you're doing your summer work experience, you would be working under the direct supervision of a regulated RPFT or RPF. A few exceptions there are some members who choose to go on to university, and they do keep their registration simply for the long-term benefit of being able to continue their work experience in the off-season. And there are a few positions, often through government, where provision of professional services on public land may be covered under another statute, such as the Forests Act or the Public Services Act. So as long as a professional is held accountable under one of those acts, they are meeting the requirement to the public service. So they wouldn't necessarily be held under MR. So what exactly is MR? It's defined under the Act. So you'll find this in Section 40 of the Act. Depending on which one you're using, you'll find it on page 32. And it does define that any person who's qualified to meet the eligibility requirements for registration as a regulated member, and any person who is or intends to practice forestry on public land in the province. And so practicing forestry goes back to one of our earlier slides, how the Act defines the practice of forestry and any services that fall under that definition, and also teaching the practice to anybody or supervising anybody who is practicing forestry. So there are a few different types of registers in the college. So the main split with your members are your regulated versus non-regulated. And regulated members are those who have met all the requirements and who are under MR and who have fulfilled all of the eligibility criteria. So that's the recognized diploma or educational background. They are practicing forestry in Alberta. They have met the citizenship requirements and have met the requirements under their good character and reputation. And your regulated members consist of your RPFTs, your RFTs, and your FTTs, your trainees and those of us who have yet to write the exam. Non-regulated members are those who don't meet the eligibility requirements. So those might be your student members, non-practicing members who may be RPFTs or RFTs, but who aren't currently practicing forestry, so they may have just taken leave from the practice for a while. So as long as they're not actually practicing, they don't necessarily have to maintain a fully regulated membership until they return to the practice. Also your associated members. So these are all of the fellows who don't have the educational background and work experience to be able to meet the core competence requirements for eligibility. So all of our associate members, they're non-regulated members, which means they are moving towards getting a regulated membership by doing work experience and picking up classes in the evenings and weekends, trying to fill those gaps in their competency requirements. So your non-regulated members don't actually receive a practice permit. That's exclusive to regulated members. So all the registers for the non-regulated members, as I just listed, and that includes honorary. So often there are members who they may not have been a forest professional who met all the criteria, may not be practicing forestry, but they end up being listed as an honorary member. This is not often used. I think we actually only have one current honorary member. And then the 4 registered for our regulated members. So there's the RPFT, RFT, and FTT. And just to expand on that in case we need to, is the RPFT is your registered professional forest technologist. So have met all the requirements to become to hold the professional title. Your RFT is your registered forest technologist, so has met all the requirements with the exception of writing the exam. And your forest technologist in training. So these are generally your new graduates, or they may be just coming in from another province and have yet to meet the work experience criteria. And then we have the temporary register. And so that's anybody coming in from another province. So they'll generally be regulated in another province and coming in to work temporarily in the province of Alberta. There is a limit to how long that they can hold a temporary practice permit. So they will get a practice permit here in the province, and they would be required to sign off saying that they have become acquainted with all of our provincial legislation. And I believe it's 12 months is the maximum we're up to renewal that they can stay on that register. So an RPFT is one who has met all of the registration requirements. So all of the initial eligibility requirements for membership, the character and reputation, Canadian citizenship, and the core competence requirements for eligibility. They have met the requirements of the professional exam and completed the 24 months required work experience. So essentially the FTT program. And once an RPFT, a member has the right to the professional title, and they are eligible for professional sign-off, and they will hold an annual practice permit that will now have no conditions. Generally no conditions. There may be conditions imposed if a member may have gone through a hearings process, for example. And we'll actually expand on that later as well. So your RFT has met all of the requirements of the RPFT eligibility and member requirements, with the exception of completing the professional exam. There will be conditions on their practice permits, simply that they are required to work under the supervision of a regulated professional, so whether that's an RPFT or an RPF. So the temporary register, again, primary residence is outside of Alberta. They do meet the character and citizenship requirements and the competency requirements, and cannot remain on the temporary register for more than 12 months. So if they are here longer than that, they would end up just becoming a fully regulated member. They can use the RFT title while they are here. They wouldn't be able to use the RPFT title without writing the professional exam. Although there is the Western Province Agreement, the Labor Mobility Agreement, where an RPFT from another province may transfer here permanently as a regulated member, given that they were regulated in their home province. And they would be able to register as an RPFT without writing the full exam, although they would have to write what we call a jurisprudence exam, and it's essentially a partial exam. So under labor mobility, we basically don't look under the hood, is how the agreement is set up. And that all would have been done in the home province, but we do have to make sure that we are bringing in members who do meet the character and citizenship requirements, and that we do make sure that they are familiar with the provincial laws and legislation. So all of the core competency and the academic background would have been satisfied by their home body. And your FTT, your Forest Technologist in Training, basically has satisfied the eligibility criteria for becoming a regulated member. Has not yet done any of the postgraduate work experience as required, so the 24 months, and has not yet done the exam. So this member will have conditions on their practice permit. They do still have to apply for a practice permit each year. But they will be required to work under the supervision of an RPFT. Okay, so membership requirements. I think we've gone over this quite a bit, so I'll just go quickly through it. So the academic background has to be met. Our benchmark is set by the NATE Forest Technology Program. So it is broken down into a specific core competency checklist. So if we do get any applicants from alternate two-year programs, if a review has already been conducted, we are able to bring them in. So a good example of that would be oh, I'm drawing a blank. There's a couple in Ontario here, two-year programs that do meet the requirements, and a review has been done by the membership director and committee to verify that they do meet all of our eligibility requirements. If we do get an application that a review hasn't been conducted on, we will put them through the academic assessment process, which basically is a bit of a lengthy process and compares all of the competencies they would have achieved through their diploma program against our core competencies. So again, the proof of good character, that's done by the professional references. That should say 3, sorry. So you all would have submitted 3 professional references when you applied for registration. Proof of Canadian citizenship. So basically, you've proven that by the right to practice in Alberta and that you are practicing in the province of Alberta. So it's not a requirement that you're practicing in the province of Alberta, but I mean, you wouldn't really need to be a regulated member if you weren't practicing. So once you are a regulated member, there are some additional requirements. So you do have to make sure that you know and understand all of the CAPFT ethics and the code of conduct. Your submission of your annual practice permit application, and so that will be the one that you do every November, where you submit your annual dues, your annual declaration, which is the continual proof of good character, and your continuing competency hours. So these 3 things, as well as keeping all of your contact and employment information up to date, can make up the annual practice permit application process. You're required as a regulated member to comply with the CC program and to understand the limitations and privileges associated with the type of membership and the practice permit that you have. So that means just knowing what conditions might be on your practice permit, whether you're an FTT, RPFT, or if you have any additional conditions that might have been applied to your permit. So once you are RPFTs, which is right around the corner for most of us, there are some additional privileges beyond just a regulated member. So you do have right to the professional title. Non-professionals do still have right to title, but with RPFTs you do have the professional title. You will no longer have to work under the direct supervision of a regulated professional, and that will be shown on your annual practice permit. You will have signing authority and full scope of practice. Okay, so CAPFT bylaws, and so these are all available on the website. If you do go online and take a look at regulating the profession, you'll find a link to bylaws, and they're all neatly set up there. There's 12 different sections there. So CAPFT has established these bylaws in compliance with the Act and the regulation. And their purpose is to assist us in the effective governance and the business of the college. So these were set up by CAPFT, so by your elected board, and accepted by the membership by a vote. So the council would have identified where these bylaws needed to be drawn up, and it would have been brought forward at an AGM and voted on by the membership there. A bylaw can be amended to maintain the best business practices. So things change over the year. The bylaw may be written, and then the regulations might change or the practice might change a little bit, and so a special resolution can be brought forward to maintain that best business practice in respect to the membership and the college's priorities. And so that would be issued in the same way as the original bylaw, where a special resolution will be made up and drafted by the council, approved by the council, and then brought forward for formal approval by the membership at the annual AGM. So as I said, the bylaws are broken down into 12 sections. There are a few that you'll need to focus on a little bit more than others, but I would still suggest to be familiar with them all. So Article 1, protocols, that pertains to the issuance of the professional seals, so your stamps and your RPFT certificates. Article 2, the objectives. And so those are the objectives we went through earlier in the presentation. So they're actually listed on the website in a couple different spots under the home area and then also under the bylaws. So that's where those actually stem from. And so Article 3, membership. This is where you're going to find your different registers, dates and deadlines, all that kind of stuff. So it defines all the criteria that needs to be met in order for a member to be placed under a specific register. So all those things that I was saying about the conditions to be met, this is where that's actually in writing. This article is where we define the regulated versus the non-regulated membership. It's where we set all of our dues and any fees. So that's your annual dues and any kind of fees like exam fees. This also is where we set any dates and deadlines and reinstatement fees. So dates and deadlines would be November 30th for practice permit application, and September 30th is the end of your continuing competence year. And all of those dates will be put out here. Also any kind of deadline dates pertaining to suspensions and cancellations you will find under Article 3 in the bylaws. This is also where you are required to apply for your annual practice permit in order to receive your annual license. And so this is where you'll find that actually written. Article 4, council. So that's the list of council positions that we went over. And this also defines the criteria required for a member to be appointed into office. So not any member can be a council member, essentially. You do have to be a regulated member, and at that, a regulated member in good standing. So a canceled or suspended member or a student member wouldn't be able to go for office. Article 5, officers, essentially just defines the executive council as extended from the CAPST council. So those were your 3 presidents, your president, vice, and past, your finance director, who is your treasurer essentially, and the registrar as an ex officio officer. Article 6, meetings, outlines how all the meetings will be conducted, establishes what the minimum requirements are, so your quorum for each meeting and who has voting rights. So again, that's regulated members in good standing for voting rights. Committees basically defines the committees as extended by the college council. It'll define each of these committees there. So those were your membership committee, your competence committee, and your complaints committee. Article 8, Finances, essentially defines how your finance director and how the college will handle the finances and the annual audit. Ethics. This is where your code of ethics and code of conduct stem from. So this is where the basic ethics are stated, and it's split up into 3 different categories: the duties of a college member, the duties to the public, and the duties of a member to their employer or client. And then there are a number of ethics listed under each category. And Article 10, Parliamentary Authority, basically just defines how the college governs itself. And so we are required in all of the meetings to follow Robert's Rules of Order. Bylaw amendments. So this is what I was talking about a little earlier. So a bylaw might be changed, rescinded entirely. There might be additions or alterations to it, and then that will be voted on by the membership in order to be approved before we can actually carry out any kind of bylaw change. Anybody can propose a resolution. So any member. Generally, they're brought up by the council simply because things may become outdated and the council is well versed in the bylaws, and so that's generally where it's noticed. And then we bring them forward to the membership. But the membership can propose a resolution. They would submit that to the college council at least 30 days before. So it'd have to be done before the final council meeting prior to the AGM in order for the council to be able to review it to bring it forward at the AGM. And so those can be brought forward any time of year, really, as long as it falls within the 30 days. And the last article, 12, the disciplinary procedure. So this was actually replaced by the alternative complaints resolution process, which is defined under the complaints process manual. And we will also go over that later in the slides. So under your bylaw, Article 9 is where the Code of Ethics come from. These were set up as a set of guiding principles for the membership to follow. Their purpose is to raise the standards of the members and thereby the profession. So all members are required to know and understand the ethics and, of course, to follow them. And this is a requirement of all regulated members. And again, the 3 sections that it addresses is duties to the public of the members and duties to the employer or client. And here's a link directly to the listed ones. You'll find the Code of Ethics in a couple of different places online. So the Code of Conduct is actually an extension of the ethics. So the Code of Ethics is the original ethics, and then your Code of Conduct is an additional document that basically extends and develops guidelines and practices for each specific ethic. So it'll define each ethic and basically give it a breakdown, an explanation of each one, and a set of practice standards for each ethic. And that can also be found on the website. Okay, so your continuing competency programs. So we're about an hour in. So does anybody want to take just a quick 10-minute break and reconvene? Or do you guys want to keep going?
Keep going.
Keep going. All right. So as I described before, the continuing competency program was developed under the Act. So we were and are required to maintain a continuing competency program. And the purpose of it is to maintain professional incompetence of the members in order to enhance the provision of professional services in Alberta. So enhancing the forestry profession continually. Things are always changing, and this is a tool developed in order to maintain that. So for the purposes of the exam, I'd make sure you understood what the purpose of the CC program is and the breakdown here of the competency activities. So there's the 3 categories, and then there's generally a few areas under each category. So make sure you know those. This link here will take you directly to the Continuing Competency Program Manual. Gives you a little bit of history, further defines the purpose and the approach, and it'll give you information about the audit and all of the different categories as well. So membership requirements under the CC program. All regulated members are required to comply with it. So your membership requirements include the number of hours that you have to submit by the specified deadline. And these are actually requirements that are set in compliance with the Act and the regulation. So you'll find that both the Act and regulation actually list for a CC program. So your reporting requirements as a regulated member. Now keep in mind that this is actually talking about full-time active members. We have also in the past year applied a seasonal or a semi-retired status. The reporting requirements are a little bit different simply because the number of months that you're working a year is shorter, so their requirements are shorter. I wouldn't worry about making sure that you can separate them for the exam, but it is good to know. So each member is required to submit 75 hours per reporting period. 45 of that 75 hours must fall under Category 1, Structured Learning. So as I said, there's the 3 categories. And Category 1 is the only one that actually has the minimum requirement. If all 75 of your hours fall there, that's perfectly fine. There aren't actually any requirements for the second 2. But there are quite a number of competencies that fall under those other 2, and we'll define those going forward here. So they are set up just to allow for members to have different avenues of continuing competency opportunities. So that 3-year reporting period is measured by the current reporting year and includes the past 2 reporting years. So it's a rotating period. Your current reporting year always runs from the 1st of October to the 30th of September. So that's the CC close date, and then November 30th is the actual submissions deadline. So you have a little bit of time afterwards to get those in. Just a heads up that is proposed to change in the next year or so. November 30th is the number to remember for the exam. But just to give you guys a heads up that with everything going digital and online, that submission deadline will probably be moved a little bit just in order to better facilitate the CC audit within our deadlines. So reporting is done primarily online using the CCP reporting form. So I'm sure all of you are familiar with that. Used to be done fully in the paper format, which is still available but not really widely used anymore. The online reporting form is the most efficient and best way to use it. So here's the breakdown of your hours categories. So category 1, the structured, which is the one with the minimum requirement of 45, is defined as any kind of organized, thereby structured learning that relates to the practice. And so that might get a little bit confusing because the practice does have a lot of different avenues, and we do have members who are in a lot of different types of roles, traditional, forestry, and otherwise. So as long as it relates to the practice as your job requires, that's the intention of it. So it's any kind of courses, tech sessions, online sessions, seminars, workshops, any kind of in-house training, everything like that that pertains to your role or your job can be reported under structured learning. So all those hours are reported at a 1-to-1 ratio. So for every hour that you complete under that course or seminar, you will report 1 hour and you'll be rewarded 1 hour under your 75-hour count. Vocational enhancement is reported a little bit differently. You'll still report the actual hours that you spend under this group, but the system will give you 1 hour for every 5 you report. So everything under categories 2 and 3 are actually on a 5-to-1 ratio. So vocational enhancement covers any hours included for participation in working groups, natural resource associations, education advisory boards, things to that effect. Also, if you are an FTT sponsor, you can claim your hours under category 2 here. And mentorship, mentorship is actually time spent assisting an associate member to achieve any kind of lacking work experience that they need to get in order to become a regulated member. So not to be confused with mentoring somebody that you might be supervising at work. Both sponsorship and mentorship, a member actually has to be an approved sponsor or mentor by the college, so there are some forms and documentation that has to be provided in order for you to be able to collect those hours. And professional contributions, that is any kind of preparation and delivery of this structured learning. So if you're delivering a first aid course or a scaling recertification course or anything like that, you can claim those hours. The exception with this would be if that's your job. If you are a NAEP program teacher or instructor, you wouldn't be able to list this as professional contributions because it actually falls under your job description, not necessarily continuing education. Also, any kind of publication. So any time spent preparing, writing, researching, and publishing. Any publications where the subject matter is forestry related, that can also be included here. Also, any time spent on councils like the CAPFT Council, working groups, committees, tech session planning group, that can also be included here under vocational enhancement. So CAPFT complaints, this is your optional question. So the complaints manual was actually made by both CAPFT and CAPF. So we have an alike complaints manual because we do both follow the same act. So it was actually built by a lawyer, by Miller Thomson LLP. And basically what the manual does is expands on on Part 4 of the Act, which is the complaints process. So for your exam, be able to describe the responsibilities of your complaints director. Know who can file a complaint, and so that's really anyone. Anyone can file a complaint. Any member can file a complaint for professional misconduct of another member. A member of the public can go through CAPFT to file a complaint. And the college itself can actually put forward a complaint if a member has conducted professional misconduct. So know who a complaint can be filed against. So anybody who is a regulated member, anybody who's been unprofessional and is a regulated member can have a complaint filed against them. And that does include people who have left the college in the last 2 years. So if somebody has been unprofessional and chooses to leave the profession knowing so, that doesn't necessarily mean they're safe from a complaint. So know the timelines associated with the process, and be able to describe how a complaint is received. So there's a couple different ways. A complaint can be provided to the college in written format. So a member of the public can send a written complaint to the complaints director or to the office, and then by extension the complaints director, notifying of professional misconduct. And also an unwritten complaint can be used. So this is where CAPFT would bring forward a complaint. For example, professional misconduct under the continuing competency program. So the college wouldn't need to bring forward a written complaint. Also, if your complaints director themselves is fully aware of unprofessional conduct, then they wouldn't need to provide a written complaint because they are directly aware of the misconduct. Understand the investigation process and the alternative complaints resolution process. So there are a few links here. So the manual itself can be found online, and also you can review Part 4, Divisions 1 through 6 of the Act itself. So the manual is an extension of Divisions 1 through 6. So the steps of a complaint process. It starts with the college receiving a complaint. So somebody will make a complaint, written or non-written, to the college. College then has to act on that complaint. And the complaints director actually has a few options on how they will act on that complaint. We'll actually get into that right away here. The alternative complaints resolution may be used in place of a full investigation and hearing. An ACR may ultimately end up at a hearing, depending on the outcome and depending on the what happens under the complaints resolution process. So in the event we don't go the route of a complaints resolution process or alternative CR, there would be an investigation, and the complaints director or somebody appointed by the director will undergo the collection of evidence. The director or the evidence collector or possibly somebody hired for legal consultation will provide a report. After the investigations have been completed, all evidence has been collected, and all reports have been submitted, the complaint would then go forward to a hearing. So that would be your public hearing and your review. From that hearing, there's a couple different ways the hearing can go. There would essentially be a decision, basically the outcome of the hearing, and the final would be the opportunity for an appeal by the investigated member. So as I said, there's a few things the complaints director can do when they receive a complaint. Primarily, the first thing to do would be to encourage a resolution between the complainant and the investigated, you know, if that seems like a necessary route. If that resolution can't be made between the complainant and the investigated, then the director will go forward with an investigation. Depending on what the director comes across after starting their investigation, they may choose to refer the complaint through the alternative complaints resolution process. So this gets broken down a lot more in the manual. So I'd go refer to the manual for additional information. And so what qualifies as grounds for a complaint? Basically, unprofessional conduct. And you will find under the Act the definition of unprofessional conduct, actually. It's right in the front. See if I can find it for you. So you'll find it just past the practice of forestry. Unprofessional conduct can mean any or all of the following. So the display of lack of knowledge or lack of skill or judgment in the provision of professional services, any contravention of the Act, the Code of Ethics, or standards of practice may be considered unprofessional conduct. Any contravention of another enactment that applies to the profession. If anybody represents or holds out that a person was a regulated member in good standing while they weren't, or failure or refusal to comply with the requirements of the continuing competency program. So anything under the Act can be considered unprofessional conduct. So a complaint may be dismissed by the complaints director if it's found to be frivolous or vexatious. And so this kind of just expands on what we were going off of here. Just a few we didn't list. Conduct that harms the integrity of the profession. Carrying on the practice of a professional with a person who is under contravention of the Act. And we've gone through all these other ones. So these are all of the listed unprofessional conduct that you'll find in the Act there. And so that's actually it for the complaints. Do we have any questions? I'm going to unmute everybody and feel free to ask questions. If you're getting too much feedback, yeah, go ahead.
I noticed there were 2 PowerPoint presentations uploaded to the server. Are they the same, or are there any differences between the 2?
Okay, you know what? Use the top one.
Okay.
Use the top one that was put in today. That second one was just a PDF, and I'm not sure why they both came up as PDF or as the PowerPoint. Sorry about that, guys. The second one was just, it was the same presentation. It was just supposed to be in PDF format so you guys could print it off and make notes. But it would have been the PDF that actually went out in the reminder invitation yesterday.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions?
This is Farah. I'm wondering if you guys are interested in seeing another study session on a different subject. Anything that you guys feel needs to be picked up and presented.
I would absolutely be in for one. I can't think of a subject at this time, but I would definitely be interested in attending another one for sure.
All right, sounds good.
Okay, if there's no other questions, actually, Tara, I see that you sent me a private one. I'm just going to respond to you on the message. But if there's no other questions, I'll let you guys go. Please feel free to get in touch with me if you do have any questions after today, and I'd be happy to give you as much information as I can.
Sorry, Chanel, I do have one quick question for you.
Okay, go ahead.
Now, this is kind of worst case scenario, but let's say one of us does fail the exam. What's the rewrite policy? Could you just go over that real quick?
Sure. So a member can rewrite at the next scheduled exam. There is no specific rewrite fee. Every writing fee is the same, so your fee is the same no matter whether it's your first or your fifth time writing. So you can write the exam up to 3 times unsuccessfully, at which time we would strongly suggest some additional mentoring and some study help before going forward to write again. So you're not necessarily restricted from writing again. We will continue to encourage you to write, but if you do have 3 unprofessional tries, then we'll do what we can to get you some additional help before you go in again.
And that's only at the scheduled times, like you say, so every fall and spring?
That's right, yeah.
Okay, I gotcha. I think I've got one more question too.
Sure.
You mentioned at the start that obviously the exam is going to be held in Edmonton. Were there any other proctors already set up? Do you know?
They're still on. Are you still on?
Yeah, Kelton, we are looking for somebody to mentor you guys in Drayton Valley. And I actually sent an email to, but I guess I sent it to your Miller email, and I don't know if it got resent to your.
Yeah, it got.
I don't know what the best email to use for you is now. I have like 4 of them or something.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Yeah, so an email went out to the other 2 guys there, or sorry, just a girl and a guy, and asked if they knew anybody. But yeah, if you guys could let me know of a professional who's willing to sit in the exam with you guys, then that would be cool.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'll definitely keep my ears open for somebody. How much time do you need beforehand to get that set up?
At least a week.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, we just got to make sure we get all the tests through that, you know, we don't leave things to the last minute with them receiving and being able to send information.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
So one of our attendees here just messaged me saying that they have somebody in Drayton Valley. So what I'll do is I'll get in touch with them just following this session and maybe get some further details, and then I'll email them out.
Sure, or maybe that's Julia is telling you that, right? Maybe she could just send me an email.
Actually, there's somebody else as well. So if there's a couple different proctors, that's good.
Okay. Yeah. Let me know, and then we'll get them all set up.
Perfect. And anybody who is writing somewhere other than Edmonton or Drayton Valley, Calgary might be a good example. If you do have somebody in mind that you know is available and willing, please feel free to contact Farah or myself with those details. We have put out a request from the membership. We have been trying to contact a few people, but so far have not been successful in finding somebody who is available. Do we have any other questions at all? Okay. So
Stop the recording, Chanel.